Well, folks, welcome back to Barstools and Bandtalk, Rimshots with Sean. I have a very special guest all the way from, I do believe, the Philadelphia area. This is Mark McCarty from a band that I just found out about. Fantastic band, Rat Rod, out of the Philly area. Mark, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
So your man Dave sent your stuff, and I went on your YouTube channel. And I tell you, you guys are taking if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of approach with that AC/DC kind of, it says right in your press release, 4 on the floor, get her done sort of material. Give us some background about you guys.
Well, we started out about going on 5 years ago. Mike and I got together through a mutual friend, and he was looking to put something together like what we are now. And I was just writing some music. I've been a lifelong AC/DC fan, and I was in an AC/DC tribute band at one point in time. I stopped doing that and just started writing tunes that I just felt I wanted to hear. So we got together. He liked what I was doing. I loved how he sounded on the tunes I was writing, and that progressed into our first album, which was Do You Remember Rock and Roll? And that was an all self-produced thing. I did all the instruments, he did all the vocals, and my son Bryce was working kind of in the background on some of the stuff, kind of advising, giving me thoughts and opinions, that sort of thing. We had decided to literally put the band together from that. He had joined in playing rhythm guitar. We'd gotten a drummer, different drummer than our current drummer, and LJ, our bass player, came along and played along, got the tunes together, played a bunch of shows, started writing new material, and we brought together our second album, which was Light 'Em Up, and we brought that out in 2019, and that was the first actual full band album with the 5 individuals playing the instruments, because the first album, like I just said, was just Mike and myself. And went on from there, played a bunch of shows, continuing on, and a couple of member changes, and now we're with Harry on drums. Bryce had left for a little while, and then he came back. He's with us again still. And we ended up putting a live album out in late 2020, early 21, from a few shows we played. And here we are, about a year into the project here, and we've written this album and released the singles here to this point right now.
And I mean, just before we went on to record, and I brought it up, I mean, there's no denying that your singer has a very distinct. I mean, he could have replaced Bon Scott in AC/DC. His voice is that similar. Is that something that he's purposely trying to do, or is that just his voice?
Okay, I kind of dropped you a little bit there. I think you were asking if it was something that he's.
Yeah, is that something that he's trying to do, or is that just his voice?
It's his voice. He has kind of morphed a little bit through the years because, well, frankly, our music has morphed a little bit. It's kind of taken on more of a life of its own. I'll be frank about it. The first record, we were like, well, what would Malcolm do? What would Bond do? Sort of vibe, sort of thing. But we've grown into our own. So his voice has progressed a little bit as well. But it is truly who he is and how he sounds.
Well, and I mean, so I mean, AC/DC, it doesn't matter if they, put an album out in 73 or they put an album out last year. They're what I call timeless, and I think other people like it. They have a sound that just works no matter what, and there's very few bands I think that can say that. You guys are putting a new spin on it, and I'm not saying that you're trying to be AC/DC, but you're emulating your heroes, and it sounds very fresh.
Well, thank you. We're certainly, like I said, I might have said it to you earlier, but I'll say it again here anyway, and I say it all the time. We don't run from our influences. I mean, we enjoyed the sound of AC/DC. We really enjoy that vibe, and yeah, we're not trying to copy them, but they're ingrained into us. I've been a fan since I was 13, and I'm a little bit older than that now, so I can't escape it, and I'm not going to try to. But there's other influences that we like too, so they just naturally come out as well.
Sure. And I'm going to guess you and I are the same vintage. We're both in that 36-year-old neighborhood. I'm just
absolutely.
But if you remember, pardon?
I said, I like you.
Yeah. But if you remember when we were coming up, Crocus was always getting that comparison to AC/DC, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And when they kind of went off topic or off grid, their popularity seemed to wane. And then when they went back, and I'm not getting that though. It's a different vibe with you guys.
Yeah, we're not going to stray too far from the farm, so to speak. I can guarantee you that, because we do understand that the popularity that we do have is due to the type of tunes that we write and the type of performances we put on. And it's high energy, it's 3-chord rock and roll. It's not thought out too deeply. It is just guttural. It's the same old formula that Elvis had.
Right.
It's feel it, play it, own it. And we won't go from there. We're not going to stray from there. When I say we're morphing and developing and moving around, it's within that framework that is Rat Rod. There's no question about that. And I always say, and as far as I'm concerned, it's the way it's going to be. As far as whatever control I have, you will never hear a ballad from us.
Well, that's not a bad thing. I also love what you said there a couple minutes ago. You're not going to run from your influences, and I think a lot of bands, certainly that I've been around, you'll bring something up, and they are influenced by a certain band, but they're almost ashamed to admit it. Myself, I always joke around about, somebody will say, "Where'd you get that drum fill?" And it's like, "Oh, well, here, it's this Motley Crue album, this cut, and I wear it. I stole it. There's only so many licks to go around. I do my own version of it." Do you guys find that when you're out there, you get people coming up to you, laying the AC/DC card down, expecting you guys to kind of back away from it?
I suppose they probably do expect it, but I've never heard anybody say it. I've never heard anybody call us on it. If they think it, they've been polite enough to keep it to themselves. So it wouldn't surprise me a bit if that were the case, though.
So I always like to, when I interview somebody from outside of my region. I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, so I'm north of you guys.
Yeah.
I always like to ask about the scene, because obviously when I was coming up, and probably when you were coming up, and are you from Philly?
Actually, no. I am from Illinois. I grew up in the Midwest of U.S. I moved out to the East Coast about 30 or so years ago.
Okay. So you kind of were like when Cinderella and those guys were kind of getting signed, you were around?
I came out here just after they got signed and broke out, and there were still other bands around here trying to. I came out here. Heaven's Edge was right there.
Okay.
They had just got signed. They were out on tour when I moved out here.
So I always heard about the whole Jersey and Philly thing, where if you were a musician and you were gonna, typically get in free, you didn't get in free. You had to get up and play with the band and jam, and there was this vibe down there that you didn't cross your arms and stand at the back of the room. You kind of support it. Is the scene still like that down there?
The scene is it's just much smaller, less developed scene than what it was back in the day. But it's still kind of that same thing. When you've got groups of bands that do work together, and we have a good time together, and we'll get up and jam together and things like that. That still happens, but it's much smaller than it was back in the day, for sure. There's not as many places to play, and if I'm being honest, there's not as many people that come out like they're used to. It is definitely different than it was.
Well, just for geography's sake, because up here we're a funny people up here. We don't like to rock the boat, and if we see our hometown on a movie, we get all excited and things like that. But in terms of your geography, Philadelphia, New Jersey, like that whole, you guys are actually very close in terms of being able to jump in a car and go any direction and hit a kind of a major spot.
Absolutely. In New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, for that matter, is pretty much it's the Atlantic Ocean, it's New York City, Philadelphia.
Right.
It's kind of like right in there. So it's real convenient to go to New York. It's real convenient to go to, I am a half hour from Philly. I live in the Philly suburbs myself. So here in Jersey. Yeah, and it's real convenient. We could go to the shore in less than an hour. We could go to the mountains in less than 2 hours. We're about 2 hours from Baltimore, about an hour, 2.5 hours from Washington, D.C. Geographically, it's the perfect location.
Well, and I was just going to say, so, I'm on your website and I'm looking at some of your upcoming shows, and you're doing Pittsburgh and you're doing some other places in Pennsylvania. Back in the day where we were, I mean, for us to go to Toronto from here was 18 hours. Montreal was about 12, but we could go down to Maine and it was about 6.5, 7. Just kind of, we're kind of like not landlocked, but we're almost an island, except for a little small piece of land. Are you guys getting a lot of those shows now that everything's opened up? Like, are you traveling quite a bit to get around to the spots?
Well, we're starting to. We've been traveling down to Baltimore here and there ever since, probably about two and a half years or so now. We've been traveling down to Baltimore occasionally, playing shows down there. We've been up to northern New Jersey, just outside of New York City, played a couple times up there at a place called Dingbats. And we're getting out west, and we're just very slowly starting to spread it out, starting to expand outward, that spiral, so to speak. And I look to later, towards the end of this year, when we officially put the record out and want to support it, we'll probably be doing more of that.
So I'm looking at some of your itinerary here, Mark. June 24th, Casey's Bar in Pittsburgh. I'm actually head of A&R with the RFL Records, and our CEO lives in Pittsburgh. I'm going to see if I can get him out to the show.
Cool.
What else do we have? McStevens in Levittown, Pennsylvania on July 30th. August 19th, you guys it's tentative, so I don't see a bar there. But I guess, that's a few shows. I mean, it's not a crazy amount of shows, but you guys are kind of, feeling it out and get her going again.
Exactly. We're just just exactly that. We're just getting her going again. Dusting it off and keeping the engine running and picking up speed as we go, I guess you could say, to use a car analogy. Sure.
So, I mean, that's obviously there's some space within the summer to book some other things, but then the fall comes. You guys, I'm going to guess you're going to have your album up, but you're going to look to maybe get on a couple of packages that might be taking place down there, or some different sorts of shows.
Yes, to the extent that we can, yes. There are some outside influences that kind of limit what we can do on the personal side of things, but we're definitely going to get out and do as much as we can. If we can get some short runs together, yeah, definitely. We want to do that.
So the other thing I always like to ask people, the pandemic, that was a giant pain for everybody. Sure. How did you guys fare? Did you embrace technology? Did you use things like Zoom that are sometimes wonky, which we found out to get things going? What did you guys do to kind of, keep your momentum going?
Well, that was a period of time when everything shut down. Obviously, nobody was playing, so we didn't rehearse for, I guess, about 6 weeks. We didn't rehearse, but we did keep in contact. We did Zoom meetings. I continued. I'm the primary music writer, not the only music writer in the band, but primary music writer in the band. But Bryce and I got together and we worked on ideas and worked on a few things. And I kept demoing ideas here at home and sending them out. Mike would work on vocal ideas and we'd send them back and forth, so everybody was aware of what was going on. So we did a lot of that. A lot of this record, plus about 6 additional tunes that didn't make the record, at least for now. They didn't make this record, but they'll be possibly out later. But anyway, this 16 or 17 tunes we worked on, we pretty much put together initially during COVID, and then slowly got out. We started doing a little bit of rehearsing together. It was tentative. Everybody was a little nervous, as could be expected. And the first few shows we ended up playing were basically the late summer 2020. We did some outdoor shows because that felt safe for people to play outside. So we did. And I had the lame brain idea of saying, hey, I want to do a live record. And I had the idea of wanting to do it way before COVID, of course. But I said, you know what, this is crazy, but I want to try to do something. I knew we were going to play some shows that would afford me the ability to grab the live tracks. I have a mobile 12 track that I got, and that kind of, the few outside shows we played afforded me to be able to get those tracks and do that. So 2020 was weird for sure, but we were productive and we got the document to show it, so to speak.
Well, that's fantastic. So I want to end this segment and then cover the album. A lot of people say the same thing, right? Everything shut down. People handle it different ways. I heard everything from bands broke up and packed it into, they got more tenacious. They use technology to do some things. our next segment, I want to cover that.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So we'll see you soon, guys.